Hi, welcome to some quilting tips and techniques with GourmetQuilter. I thought this time we'd have a quick look at what we might do if we've got some leftover 2.5-inch squares. There's so many, there's patterns, there's all sorts of things you can do with 2.5-inch strips and squares these days. And quite often you've got a few left at the end of a project, or you might have a strip left, a short strip, or you might have a few squares, or you just might have something left over that you could cut into 2.5-inch squares. So this is one little idea I had for just using up, because you could make a really good scrappy quilt. So there's I've just made 3 of these little blocks here. So it just takes 3 2.5-inch squares, 2 the same and 1 different one for the center, 2 for the outside corners. So there's just a little idea. So I'll just quickly run through how you might make those, and a great way to have things happening. You could be collecting 2.5-inch squares, you could be making these so that eventually, without really making any effort towards it, or apparent effort, you've got a whole lot ready and they're there to make into a quilt. So I'll show you quickly what I've done and how I've trimmed them and how that would work. They would work as little run on, run off projects. Quite often we like a little something when we're starting, so you could have some ready. Just a great way to use up some bits and pieces. So what I've got here is some 2.5-inch squares. So I've actually already cut 2 in half. Very simply done. All you need is a ruler and a cutter, and you would lay it on so that you're just cutting from point to point. So lay your ruler on, slice it in half, and there you've got 2 triangles. So to make the little block like I've made here, you need to have 2 squares. I would suggest similar colours, if not the same, just to be able to get the effect, but really it's up to you. You might want to do opposites if you've got a lot of different ones. And then your centre square. So the centre square is 2.5 inches, and I've just finger pressed the halfway mark all the way on all 4 sides, and I've also finger pressed a little halfway mark on the triangles on that long edge, because all we're going to do is we're going to stitch those onto here. So I'm going to suggest that we pop those on, and you can do the 2 opposite sides without having to change things around too much, and then we can press those and then we can pop the other 2 sides on. So I'll go ahead and I'll stitch these 2 opposite sides on first, and you could chain piece these if you've got a few to do, and then turn it round and come back down the other side with the other one on, just matching those centres so that they're sticking out even amounts at each end there. So I'm going to press these now, and I'm going to press them from the right side, and I'm going to press it so that that pushes over so that the seam goes into the triangle. Turn it round and repeat with the opposite side. Can't get much easier than that. So now what I have to do is pop the other 2 triangles. You may need to re-finger press if your marks have gone already. Pop my other 2 triangles on and stitch those in place is my next task, and then pressing and then trimming. So stitching my opposite one on. I've already sewn one this side. This is the opposite, just the same as we did the first time. It's pretty straightforward. And as I mentioned, you can chain piece these through if you're doing quite a few at a time. So now just pressing again the same way from the right side, pushing that into the triangle and popping that one in. And so now we have a nice little square here. But it's probably a little bit wonky. Often things go a little bit wonky for no particularly good reason, but we're working with fabric. Fabric can be wonky. So I'm going to suggest that we trim this. Now you can use your regular ruler. You may have a little square ruler. You may have an ordinary cutting board. You might have something like this rotary board. The rotary board is great because you can turn things around. So I might use that this time. If you don't have one, you just have to turn your fabric around. It's very simple, really. So I use the regular ruler and my cutter here. So I'm just going to trim this off. So I think that it would be nice and tidied up. It will trim down to a 3¼ inch square. So we need to line up the mark on the ruler that's 1/4 inch in with this little point here, and we can trim away anything that's sitting on the outside of that. So sit your square so that it's looking nice and straight, and then place your ruler on with that 1/4 inch line just running about where that point is. Try and have it nice and straight as well so that you get a nice straight edge. So we're going to just trim off some of those little wonky edges. Now with this rotary board here, I can just turn that without moving the fabric, which is an advantage, but it's not essential. So then I'm going to position this one on again so that that 1/4 inch line runs through there, but this time I want this line that I've just cut to line up with one of the marks across my ruler so that I'm keeping everything sitting nice and straight. So that should work quite nicely. It should still be straight with your board as well. And trim off that little bit. Same thing, turn it round. And line everything up. So this time you've got 2 sides that you can line up, and it should be on one, like on a 3 1/4 inch, because that's how big the square is going to end up. It should allow you to come through there. This line here should line up, and you can just trim off that side. And now the same thing on this piece here. So we're on to 3 1/4, so there's my 3 1/4 line. That should line up with that edge of the square. I've got a line lining up here. This line is lining up nicely with the edge of the center square that we've pieced onto. And I'm just trimming off those little bits. So what I now have is a very nice 3 1/4 inch square that I can join together with other friends that are 3 1/4 inches as well. So that was it. A little idea of something you might use up some 2 1/2 inch squares for. So thank you. Please visit www.gourmetquilter.com for other patterns and ideas that I have. Thank you.